it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I reconnected to creativity in the form of making art. And I say it that way because I want to be really clear that what we're talking about today is creativity as a way of being in the world, Sharon, not just about making art.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And as always, it's just an honor and a pleasure to be with you here on another brand new episode. I've got a really fascinating topic from a dear, dear friend of mine. She's been doing this a while, and I really had the opportunity over the past few months to go deep with her on this topic. And I said, it's really not just helped me in her field of expertise, but in life in general. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to talk about it in Autoimmune Hour, to look at a different way of, maybe, wellness, well-being, optimizing, all of that kind of stuff. So let me introduce her, and then we'll talk about the topic, because I want to intrigue you a little bit about this topic. Because you're like going to say, I don't get it, but you will by the end of the show. And it's all about owning our own creativity. So see, I can't keep it in. My guest today is Dr. Minette Riordan, and she is a modern day Renaissance woman. She is an artist, writer, entrepreneur, and advocate for creativity and essential for well-being of people and the planet. Dr. Minette Riordan is the creator of Emerge Method. It's a breakthrough transformational process that helps you heal your relationship with your inner artist so you can emerge to be your most authentic and creative self. And I'll go into more of her amazing bio in just a little bit, but I want to talk to her right away and get started on this conversation of how can creativity and becoming and releasing that inner artist within us actually create optimization in our well-being. I found it really helpful in these past few months to, I don't ever use the word heal, and that's okay, but really optimize my well-being and continue to improve past the autoimmune diagnosis. So welcome, Dr. Minette. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sharon. It's always fun to be in this conversation about creativity, and it's always even more fun to be in conversation with you. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Oh, thank you, my dear. If you're on video, you can see some of her lovely artwork behind her. And the thing, Dr. Minette, tell us a little bit about your story, because I found it so fascinating that, in a way, I felt when I first met you a few years ago, we had that in common, that we had a lot of creativity that was sort of pent up and had been corralled by other people not to express. And that's what I want to share about tonight. So tell us a little bit about your story of unleashing that inner artist.
Thank you. It's always hard to know where to enter that story because it feels like such a lifelong journey. So like so many people, I've always been creative, and that's been expressed in a variety of different ways, including different careers. I'm a lifelong teacher. I've taught high school kids, I've taught adults, taught at the university level. I have a PhD in poetry and Latin American studies. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I reconnected to creativity in the form of making art. And I say it that way because I want to be really clear that what we're talking about today is creativity as a way of being in the world, Sharon, not just about making art. In the last decade, I have dedicated tons of time to getting better at making art, but it's one small expression of my own authentic creative self. I do it through speaking, I do it through teaching, I do it through coaching, I do it through writing. I love to write. And I find that when I get too caught up in art making, other areas of my creative expression suffer. But the thing that was that biggest aha moment for me over this crazy creative journey that I've been on for the last 10 years was once I started on the path, how grumpy I get if I don't have time for creative play. I get
grumpy.
I
love the word grumpy.
I turn into a grumpy old bear, right? And it took me a while to figure out, well, why am I feeling so grumpy? What's missing? Like just dissatisfied. And I think it's exactly what you referenced at the beginning about this feeling like there's this pent up creativity that needs an outlet. And I think a lot of us start to feel that, especially as we get a little bit older, we have a little more spaciousness in our lives. We're often past our child raising years. I have 2 kids that are in university right now, but I realized that I was looking for something that would give my life a little more purpose and meaning on the day-to-day level, not like some, the angels are singing, I found my calling, but what's going to give meaning to my day-to-day just sense of joy of being in the world. And I realized that especially when my kids were young, I was growing a business, I was growing kids, I was trying to be a good wife and trying to grow this. I had a parenting magazine for over 10 years, and there was no space or time in my life for creativity. At least that's what I told myself. So I literally sort of just put it to the side and said, oh, someday I'll get back to this. And I hear this over and over again. Oh, someday I'll get back to this, because we're not taught that creativity is a normal and natural part of who we are as human beings on the planet. It's actually devalued, often mystified. There's the starving artist myth and the insane artist in the attic. There's all these stories about art with a capital A, but then there's creative play. There's the practices and the processes of just reconnecting to color, to shape, to imagery, to that feeling of just allowing it to come out of us onto the page in a way that isn't about a product or a project, but is about just the joy of being in creative mode. And this could be cooking, it could be gardening, it could be poetry, dance, song. There's so many expressions of that, but it's a place for us to get out of having to do something right and to get back into that childlike sense of wonder and reconnection to imagination. I think of it like when I was a kid, one of my favorite things was cloud gazing, lying on the grass, looking up at the clouds and seeing what shape the clouds would make. And in Texas, growing up in Texas, there were magnificent clouds. There aren't great clouds in Santa Barbara. There aren't just a lot of clouds most days. I shouldn't complain about gorgeous blue sunny skies, but sometimes it gets a little boring. So I miss my Texas clouds, and they move so fast and change so fast. But there's this whimsical ability that we have as children that gets trained out of us as we grow into adulthood and careers. But if we can bring that whimsy back, it brings fresh perspective and a different way of just being in the world that can be transformational and make us happier in a way that when we're happier throughout our system, right? Not only does it have a chemical impact, but for me, when I'm happier in those areas of my life, then it has a direct impact on especially on my mental health and well-being as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And two of the things I wanted to bring up, that sort of unleashed mine, and Dr. Minette and I were talking a while ago. We were at a conference pre-pandemic and we were chatting. And the 2 things that really unleashed for me was first grandchildren who love to do creative projects. And I was talking to Minette the other day about throughout the pandemic, there are so many ways that you can do creative things with your grandchildren, even if you're not in the room with them, which was watching videos of and doing art projects together, sending art materials over to the other house, that type of thing, and doing those wonderful things. And I was sharing with her some of the pictures from my grandchildren about, I was like, well, doggone, they're pretty good. And then the other part was I moved, and I recently uncovered, and I had been in the other place for over a decade. I don't know why they were tucked away where they were, probably just in the busyness of a move. I pulled out some of my own art from long ago and it was really interesting to show Minette as well as my own adult children. Now they're adults and they're like, oh, wow, you really can draw, Mom. So that was just the artsy part with the capital A part. But there was something releasing about remembering that. Mm-hmm. There was some that really added to the creativity in my whole world. Well, becoming more creatively thinking about options mm-hmm. and what if and those sorts of things. And that's what I really want to talk to Minette about today, is because she does have these wonderful classes that she gives people, even virtually, which is awesome, and how to paint and do these other things, release your creativity. But then the thing that I've noticed, as she was mentioning, happened in her life, when you allow yourself to be artsy, maybe crafty, whatever you want to call it, how it really changes your entire thinking. And I found that fascinating. And I too got out of that very left brain structured part of my business and allowed my business to really blossom beyond. And that's where the Shine Online, the body language part of training for the virtual world, training body language for the virtual world came from. It was just being in those moments of, well, what if? And I credit Minette with part of that as far as unleashing that stuck creativity. So let's talk a little bit about some of these ideas of, as you began to unleash your creativity and get it unstuck, what are a couple tips that you have to people to allow them to maybe even just go there? Maybe, maybe they've heard you can't draw or something else and they're afraid to go there.
Well, so many of us have heard that, including me. And when Sharon and I were at this event, she referenced, it was in January of 2020. It's hard to believe that in January of 2020, we were anywhere in person. But I had a similar experience to yours, where I was at my dad's house and going through some old boxes and found a high school sketchbook. And I would tell people, I can't draw. People would say, oh, I'm so envious of your art. I'm like, well, I can't draw. I have all kinds of fun cheats, actually, that I use to get images like this one on the canvas and to get proportions right. I use a projector and cast the image and outline the image. So there's all kinds of cheats to drawing. You don't need to be able to draw to make great art. So that's one thing. But I had that same experience of Sharon that made me get really curious about what happened between that high school art class and the 2 or 3 decades that I stopped making art. What happened? And I, like many, had a mean art teacher my freshman year in college who basically said I wasn't any good and I should focus my efforts elsewhere. And I wasn't an art major. I was taking the class as an elective because I loved art and creativity in all ways. And I stopped making any visual art for almost 30 years. So I was so stuck and I didn't even know it. I didn't even remember that had happened. It was a long way back to finding my joy again. And Sharon and I have conversations so many times every single week with adults that say, my parents wouldn't pay for me to go to art school because they didn't think I could make a living, or I had a mean art teacher. There's so many stories of that one art teacher, and it could have happened from any time from first grade all the way through university, that said, you're really not that talented. I think you should put your time and efforts elsewhere. And there's so much focus put on product and very little emphasis put on process and the joy and the process we get. And I think that's what you're speaking about. So for me, what happened is the first thing I did was I started coloring mandalas. Like, that was a very simple thing. Me and the kids would sit on the couch and we'd watch Emerald, bam! And we loved Emerald. We loved cooking shows, and we would color these mandalas. I found a book at Barnes and Noble, and we would just color. And from coloring, I started drawing more. And then from drawing, I started painting more. But what I've noticed is that when I am in the process of just putting color or line or marks on a piece of paper or a canvas, that my hands are focused on the activity, but my mind is free to roam. And some of my best business ideas come through when I'm making art or when I'm writing in my journal, and I'm not thinking about what I need to be doing, want to be doing. So thinking isn't the answer to being in creative possibility is actually distraction, right? It's being really focused on one thing that allows our mind to see new possibilities and new connections. So for people who are newer to making art or using art as a process this way, it's very meditative. It is a beautiful form of active meditation. It's also can be completely overwhelming because there's so many supplies, there's so many kinds of paper, there's so many surfaces. So one of the things that I teach is practice the concept of creative constraints, which you've heard me talk about, Sharon. One piece of paper and 3 colors, like whether it's crayons, markers, colored pencils, doesn't matter what the tool is. But give yourself a constraint or say, I'm just going to play with shapes today. My mom and I right now I'm creating a 21-day painting happiness project for just my mom and I, because it's connection during COVID. She's an amazing artist, wanted to reconnect to her creativity. And right now, today, the prompt was paint triangles, just play with triangles. Do you know how many things you can make out of a triangle? Like if you look at the duck over here behind me or that wonky bird, there's a lot of triangular shapes. So we get so caught up in what we think it has to look like that we lose connection with the sense of play. You give a kid a piece of paper and a pencil or a stack of paper and a pencil, and they can go for hours. They're caught up in the story making and the ideation. So simply playing with art materials and letting go of our need to make it look like art, being reconnecting to that, again, I'll say it over and over and over again, that childlike sense of curiosity, then it gets us into a whole different opportunity to see possibility. And I saw it happen over and over again during COVID with my own clients. For example, I had a client who had an in-person art studio in San Jose, California. And I'd been telling her for a couple of years, you need to get your classes online and resist. I'm an in-person local studio. Well, when the pandemic hit, she was forced to go online, and she had one of her best years in business ever because all of a sudden her studio was open to people from all over the world. It's been the most beautiful thing to watch. And I think what people love about her and her work is it's all about the process. So yes, it's fun to make pretty things, but more impactful to our actual well-being is letting go of the pretty and focusing on the play.
Oh, I love that. And I put that into recovering from any sort of health crisis as well. Just trusting the natural process, shall I say, and allowing possibilities. And to me, the constraint was, well, the diagnosis was a bit of a constraint. Not that I believe the diagnosis, but there is something physically going on, okay? I just want to let people understand that. I mean, yes, I understand the label they have to put on it. That's kind of how it works. They have to slap a label on it. And to me, but see, I see what Minette teaches is just allowing to expand this possibilities and accepting constraints that are there, whether that is your physical well-being or 3 colors and a piece of paper. It's all the same process. And that's what I love about when I had started to release that inner creative person that had been locked away. It's so funny. We might have had the same college art teacher. I know we didn't, but same teacher, different body. Yeah. Who not only, I went back to school later in life, and who not only told me that I was by far the least skilled in the class, but also at my age, maybe I should reconsider. And I thought that was a very strange thing, but it too shut me down in multiple ways. But oddly, it was almost taken as the truth, which I relate to how when medical professionals tell us, quote unquote, their judgment or their stats or whatever. And I was reading articles about all these artists that started later in life and are hanging in national galleries. So, don't let these constraints from other people stop you. I think that's so important. But the one constraint I have to let stop us right now is I got to take a quick commercial break. But that's only a 2-minute constraint, guys. Hang in there with us. We'll be right back.
Life Interrupted Radio will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com to learn more.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star reader's favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Welcome back, everyone. I'm having so much fun with Dr. Minette Riordan. And, she is a modern day Renaissance woman. She's recreated herself numerous times, which I absolutely admire, people that just maybe go through fire and rise up like a brand new, beautiful, colorful phoenix again. And she is just a creative catalyst and mentor for artists and creatives she's been fondly called the unicorn Squirrel Wrangler. I had to read that because I keep forgetting it, but she has this unique ability to help creatives manage the bright, shiny object syndrome and increase their productivity without getting bored or burned out. And I love that about her. But one of the things that I think about well-being and wellness is oftentimes the bright, shiny object syndrome there. And I'm wondering if people might start going, oh, Sharon, another thing, now I have to get creative and I can't, and they'll fill in the blank. My fingers don't work, my mind, brain fog, all of these sorts of things. Yet, Minette, this isn't just about physical constraints, because I was reading an article the other day on the latest research about trying something new, and especially something new creative, whether it was movement or a creative like in art projects, really helps build new brain neurons and synapses and all of that. Now, I'm not a brain expert, guys, but it was fascinating how it really was helpful to people in optimizing and helping with brain fog and things like that. So, Minette, let's talk about these sorts of constraints we might be hearing from people, from our beautiful community saying, well, XYZ doesn't work like it used to. But I think that happens to us whether we have a diagnosis or not, just as we age, right?
Yes, 100%. So there are absolutely constraints. Like one of the things even personally that I've noticed is the amount of energy it takes because I can get caught up in the studio and want to paint for 10, 12 hours. And I can't always do that depending on how I feel that day. But I wanted to come back around to this painting practice I've been doing with my mom. So my mom is late 70s. She has Parkinson's. She has an MFA in ceramics and sculpture. She was a fine artist for many, many years. And I've watched her be really frustrated over the last number of years. And it often depends on how good a night's sleep that she had, whether she has the energy, but her hands don't work like they used to. She doesn't have the strength to hold a pencil or a paintbrush in the same way. So when she reached out to me and said, I want to do something fun. So she's reaching out because she's looking for connection between us. We live far apart. We don't live close together. And so I started thinking about how can we make this fun and playful? Because if it's not fun, we're not going to stick with it. How can I keep her out of her fine art head of needing it to be perfect or look realistic? Because she is an amazing, she's very skilled at drawing. And by the way, drawing is a skill that anyone can get better at. And for the first time, Sharon, yesterday, she told me a story she'd never told me before about her own mean art voices from high school. And all I think about my mom is that she's an amazing artist. And she had we were playing with feathers, and she'd sent these flowers she drew. And I envy her freedom to just draw something. But what I noticed was her own judgment coming up. So what can happen is the judgment can stop us from starting. So this, again, isn't about making something beautiful or realistic, but about connecting to the magic of play. So with my mom, what we did was we got some very inexpensive watercolors, a little bit nicer than the cheap Crayola ones that you would get as a kid, but still inexpensive watercolors, a big fat brush. We got some water-soluble oil pastels, which are like big, chunky, creamy crayons. They're super fun to play with. And we just started with a concept or a theme that was about putting color on the paper so that we could get out of our representational thinking. We've been taught since childhood that we need to create something that looks like something, but kids don't do that. I don't know about you, Sharon. When I was a kid drawing trees, the trees could be purple. They could be red.
Well, not only that, I think about the representation of the bird where it's sort of a, sideways three.
Yes, yes.
And, I remember that when you said it has to be representational, that's exactly what flew into my mind. It could be, and that could be the same size. Everything could be anything from a hummingbird to an eagle. That was it.
Yes, and those kind of symbols are so powerful, right? They're recognizable. So playing with symbols is great. But when we have fine motor skills or arthritis or pain in our hands, it can be frustrating to think about cutting images out to create collage or to hold a pen or a paintbrush long enough to create something. So look for innovative ways, and this is back to that constraints idea, that you could let go of the need to hold something tightly and hold it loosely, hold the idea loosely, hold the brush loosely. Tear paper and create torn paper collage is a really fun, playful thing to do. So sometimes we can get so caught up in that I can't voice. I can't physically, I can't artistically or skillfully. And by the way, even the definition of artistry, Sharon, is skill or ability. So we all have artistry in some area of our lives, and we can choose to get better at others. So it's a choice to get better at art. It's not a necessity, but it's not a choice from my perspective to access our own creative thinking. As you said at the beginning, this is so much about being able to see possibilities in the way that we haven't seen them before. I taught a fun workshop last weekend called The Sacred Garden, where we were doing collage and talking about spring and planting seeds using collage. And what I saw for these women were the connections that happen by just thinking differently about who they're being in the world, sort of planting seeds of creative ideas that can then evolve and bloom over time. That bright, shiny idea syndrome gets in our way because we hold it all in our heads. And sometimes we just need to go plant the ideas, whether those ideas are related to health and wellness or emotional well-being. We can have so much clutter up here, and creative expression is a great way to clear that clutter from our creative brains and get it out onto paper where it can be saved for later or torn up and thrown away. So I invite people to think about, in the journey to optimizing health and wellness, how could planting some creative seeds actually support you in getting some of the crazy making clutter out of your brain, whether it's there's an article I want to read or a wellness path I want to pursue. There's so much information coming at us all the time that it's overwhelming. So another way that creative play, especially coloring, whether it's a coloring book or just putting color on a paper, can support us is clearing that clutter so we can get back to that place of centeredness and calm, from which it's a lot easier to see our options with fresh perspective and not just feel like there's too many paths and I don't know which way to go.
Yes. And one thing I like to do is even do some of that coloring at night, because I have found that not only is it clearing from the mind, getting away from screen time, getting all of that. So it actually allows me to sleep better. It's a sort of my own meditative process of, I have to admit, I love mindfulness. I love all of that, but sometimes the monkey starts running away with the show.
Yes.
And I find if I just calm down, instead of trying to force the meditation, I color for a while. It's amazing to me how the shift is greater than just in the mind, that the physical body goes along with the show.
It's so true. There's a reason why coloring books have been in the top 10 or certainly the top 100 bestseller list on Amazon for over a decade. There's a reason why LinkedIn and the World Economic Forum are talking about creativity as the number one skill that leaders need. We need relief from stress and burnout, but we also need access to the creative thinking in our brains. I believe that when we're open to our own creative potential, we can solve all the world's problems. We've just forgotten that we're actually amazing thinkers. And I could get on a soapbox about how education actually trains creativity out of kids because they wanted worker bees. I feel like in the United States, the educational system is still stuck in the industrial age, but that's a conversation for another day. But this idea that we're not, and I've seen the shift is happening. So I have 2 kids in college, so we've just been through high school. I've seen the creative opportunities that they're getting to play with that are so different from when I was in school. So just notice, where are you not giving yourself permission to think differently or to see unusual combinations? And this was me through school. I was quiet in class. I didn't feel confident to speak out, even though I almost always knew the answer as long as it wasn't in math class. I knew the answer, but I wouldn't necessarily share the answer because I didn't have the confidence. So I had the creativity and the innovation, but I'd had enough people say, don't go there, that I became really quiet all the way through my doctorate. And I got straight A's all the way through grad school. Not so much as an undergrad. I played a lot as an undergrad, but that reopening to creative exploration can come in so many ways. I often tell people to look around at the things that you already do and find where your creative play is happening. Because if it's not happening, you're probably feeling extra tired and burned out, but often it's getting channeled into cooking, into gardening, into raising kids, into entertaining back when that was possible. So there's ways that we tend to channel our creativity into what are considered more acceptable forms. And then once we start giving space and breath and movement and joy to creative expression through the arts, we'll find we lose interest in some of those other things where we used to channel a lot of that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And 2 things came to my mind about the creative expression when you were talking about kids. Is having grandkids, but there's more open space when they're your grandkids versus your own kids. If you're not there yet, lovely community, that is one of the blessings, is that there's much more open space. And what I love about that is just pulling out the paper, pulling out markers, and we're having a creative time. And there's really no agenda.
Yes.
There isn't. Sometimes we just made some Easter cards for family members, things like that. But that was the only creative agenda, was like, let's make something to send us, Grandpa so-and-so who doesn't live near us, type of thing. That creative expression, one of my things is I don't want to stifle their creative expression like mine was. And so I find that's just allowing me to notice, oh my gosh, this judgment is coming up internally in my head about that, whatever, that card or something like that, and just letting it go.
Yes.
And I have found that so freeing, that sort of the constraint is I'm not going to lay this on another person. Yet I've noticed that changes my thinking in the long run by having that desire not to lay this on someone I deeply love. Then I start thinking, okay, I know it sounds weird, but I noticed that I was judging others. And then I started to notice you're judging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
took those opportunities of noticing that I was constraining myself about judging others till when I finally said, gosh, okay, you're not doing it there, but you're sure doing it on yourself, an internal job on yourself. Yeah. So I know you talk a lot about this creative expression and allowing ourselves to get away from ourselves, out of ourselves. We need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Dr. Minette about that, because I think it's critically important to learn to let the inner creative out and rein back in that inner judge. So we'll be right back.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for inspired conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Research shows we apologize up to 10 times a day, and most of the time, we say sorry as a response to someone else's mistake. What if we thanked people instead of all that unnecessary apologizing? So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, you say, thank you for listening. Join us at projectforgive.com, a free, non-religious resource on global forgiveness.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sharon Sayler from the Autoimmune Hour, as you know, here. And we're having a great time talking about creativity. And you might be going, I'm getting it now, Sharon. I understand why you wanted Dr. Minette on the show. What I love about her is just this idea of she doesn't do just art, and I'll say in air quotes, like the pretty drawings you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. She does all sorts of things. She is a published author of several books, including the bestseller, The Artful Marketer, and she's currently working on her 4th book about the Emerge method, and that's a transformational process to help you heal relationships with your inner artist so you can emerge more authentic and your creative self. We've been hearing your own courageous journey through this process of yourself of rediscovery. Let's talk a little bit more about that in just the last few minutes. We have about 15 minutes left. The process is that you help people when they start to find the inner judge is ruling the show.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I think it's so important. And in fact, I just wrote an article on medium.com about some uncommon ways to overcome that voice of the critic and the blocks. So what I often will teach people around this is the first thing that you have to do is be in dialogue with that inner judge or your inner critic, right? Like you have to just kind of really be in a playful dialogue with them, not a woe is me dialogue, but a dialogue of they have a role. Their role was to keep you safe and free from judgment of others, but it became this voice of, oh, that's not good enough. And it can be a mask for many things. It can be a mask for fear of judgment. It can be a mask for fear of looking stupid or fear of being laughed at. But oftentimes it's related to that sense of if this isn't perfect, then I'm not willing to put it out there and share it. Or sometimes it's like, if I can't get it perfect out the gate, I'm not even willing to start. That was a big one that I hear from a lot of clients. They want their art to look like Picasso or Van Gogh or Frida Kahlo the very first time they put paper to pen. So the number one thing to do in order to start to make peace with that inner critic is actually to draw a picture of your inner critic. Grab a crayon, because you can't be very detail oriented with a crayon. Grab a picture of your inner critic, something small that you can keep on your desk. When you sit down for a creative play session, have a conversation with inner critic, just invite them to go have a cup of tea or a glass of wine, whatever it is, right? But invite them to just take a back seat for a while, that this is about play. Let them know that you're safe, that everything's fine, that you're not going to go hog wild while they're off having a break. So one thing is to visualize them, give them a name, personify them, and be in dialogue with them. Sometimes all we need to do is just recognize and honor, like Sharon, I love the story you shared before the break about recognizing that when you have to bite your tongue and not judge what you're seeing others do, that we have to do that for ourselves as well. And just invite the inner judge to be quiet and take a back seat, that you got this. The other thing about really stepping into this creative journey is it's essential to have beginner's mind. I've mentioned a few times throughout the show the need to be in that childlike sense of wonder. Well, it's beginner's mind. It's about not needing to learn something to be the best at something, but being willing to learn. So Sharon talked about how learning something new is one of the best things you can do for your brain at any age. And COVID has created a lot of opportunities for people to not be commuting for 2 hours a day. So they've filled that often with creative things, maybe learning an instrument or taking online singing lessons or attending some of my art retreats. I did 2 virtual art retreats last year that were so much fun. I can't wait to do them in person though. I miss Sharon being in person with people. But that beginner's mind is such a big piece of it, to not expect, to not have that judgment and expectation that it's going to be perfect right out the gate. So I would say that's a big part of just what I call learning to love your inner critic. Personify it, be it in dialogue with it, allow yourself to be in beginner's mind. And then the third thing is to be really careful who you share your creative expression with, because other people instantly tend to go to judgment, and they will tell you that it doesn't look right or things are off, and instead treat it as sacred and special, something just for yourself. Find a community of other creatives who are beginners to share with. And there are so many Facebook groups and other online communities where you can find safe space to share your creativity. But the first thing, so acknowledge the inner critic, be comfortable with beginner's mind, and be careful who you share your creative expression with. Treat it carefully, like the tender shoot of a brand new plant that's just starting to grow. It is tender, so allow it to be tender for a little while. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You don't have to share it with anyone.
I love that. And I'm glad that you brought in the social media concept, because I love your Facebook group. I'm trying to remember the name.
The Sisterhood of Unstoppable Artists.
Yeah, the Sisterhood of Unstoppable Artists. And that's a nice, safe space to share those creative things. And so finding, if you don't have it within your inner circle, which I feel sad if you don't, but if you don't have it within your inner circle, there's plenty of places to find it out there, and people that love you for who you are and appreciate the risks that you're taking. Because it does feel like a risk when we're doing something new and putting ourselves out there in that place. And I appreciate you say keep it to yourself as a tender shoot, because that means that we're going to grow into a great big strong lovely rose bush or redwood tree, whatever it is we want to be, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say, that one aspect of that inner critic's voice that's really deadly is the belief that making time for art is selfish, frivolous, unproductive, a waste of time. You can't make money at it, so why bother? Those are just 5 of the big limiting beliefs that I hear over and over again from clients and in my sisterhood about why people don't start. And then when they do start, they don't commit to making time. They don't prioritize creativity because they have so many voices in their heads telling them it's a useless waste of time. But I'm living proof. Sharon is living proof. My clients and community of hundreds and hundreds of creatives really get that my belief is that making art is a radical form of self-care. Because when we make space for making art, we're making space for relaxing, for play, and for creative ideation, which keeps our brains young and vibrant until the day we die.
Well, and to me, the creative ideation is, for me, if I had to like put a gold star by one of them, because I believe in all of this, but the creative ideation for me has radically changed how I approach my well-being and my wellness. Mm-hmm. It is allowing me to, instead of allowing me to think as everything, all these solutions as options, instead of like a commandment type of thing. Too often I was hearing from white coat authority medical people in my world, this is how it's going to be. There was no room for like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't sound right. That goes against something. What about, is that counterintuitive? All these sorts of things would happen to me when I was told about my well-being and optimizing and allowing that just to release and allow unchain that creativity that had been sort of constrained, my own constraint, although sometimes, as Minette's pointed out, there are outer forces sometimes helping you constrain it.
Yeah.
I find that allowing these times of just relaxing into it and being part of it, yes, it's not selfish, because what it is really healing. It is really being able to not only put my body in a more relaxed state, but I take the options thinking of maybe we're doing the 3 paper and 3 colors, and there's options there. Like, is it going to be red, yellow, blue, or whatever it is? It takes the options thinking into other areas of my life.
Yeah.
It helps my business growing with these options thinking and the creative thinking. I started to laugh when you said the number 5 one was not make money with my art. I just want to run that. Is that a common one? I mean,
oh yeah. Like when you think about kids that are making art and they're joyful and gleeful and they're having fun, and then they get told that there's no talent there, so why waste time developing that? But hey, you're good at math. You need to go spend all your time getting good at math because that's what you can make a living at. So that oftentimes kids and creativity gets channeled down the path. And growing up with a mom who was an artist, she would often say, and she'll still say to me, you could sell that, you could turn that into something, or other people will say that. And there's no positivity placed on hobbies anymore. And I'm a huge believer in hobbies. People used to have hobbies. They used to have spaciousness in their lives for non-screen hobbies, knitting, quilting, writing, photography, things that were fed our lives and nourished our creative souls that were outside of our careers. We become driven and focused on the need to survive, the need to thrive, whatever. But I hear over and over again, one of the most famous stories is Chase Jarvis, who has a great book called Creative Calling. And he's the founder of Creative Live, which is an amazing podcast and a whole website devoted to teaching people things like Photoshop and writing. And it's a online class platform for creatives. And his story was that he got channeled into soccer because he overheard his art teacher tell his mom, he's not that good at this, right? So, but he's really good at soccer. So he overheard that and he thought he was going to be a professional soccer player. And then he went to medical school. And really what he wanted most was to be a photographer. And he became a very successful, lucrative photographer after these failed attempts at these other career paths in his life. But he didn't trust what he knew from childhood, which was creativity was his path. So I love some of those stories. I even got told, as someone who I was studying poetry, the question I got asked all the time is, what are you going to do with that? As an undergrad, when I studied Spanish, my stepfather lovingly, right? Like it was not intended to diminish me, but would lovingly say, well, you could be a flight attendant. Right. So they were always looking for, what are you going to do with that skill? And for me, the essence of what we're talking about today is there's nothing to do with the art that we make. There's nothing to do with creative practice and process. It's about mindfulness, relaxing, relieving stress. When we relieve stress, we know that, especially with autoimmune, that getting stress out of our bodies is one of the best ways to optimize our health and well-being. Getting stress out of our body allows us to see possibilities that we couldn't see before. It allows us to get outside the constraints that have been placed on us, like you said, to get away from the shoulds or musts and back into the realm of what else is possible.
Absolutely. We're down to the last 5 minutes, but one thing that we haven't talked about that I'm just going to throw out, we don't really have time to go into it, guys, but my one thing that I found that I picked up besides the paper and the markers, gardening. I think a lot of people, as I go to the nursery now and looking for new plants for the spring season and stuff, and I'm noticing there's a line because of social distancing now, but gardening too. So everyone, you don't have to stick to the pencil and paper here.
Not at all. Gardening, and I would say cooking as well. People have had so much more time to cook and play with recipes and express their creativity through bringing cooking back into our lives. We're not eating out anymore.
Oh, absolutely. What's so funny is I grew these amazing peppers. And honestly, I did not know that the green pepper was an immature red pepper. I'm sorry. I did not know that. Yeah. But it got left on the vine too long and it turned red. And I said, what do you know? But anyway, what was so cool was I cooked my family something from the garden for a long time last summer. And I thought that was really cool. Everybody's like, you grew this? Yes, I did. So anyway, Minette, tell us more about how people can find out about your amazing online adventures, as well as where they can find out more about you. And I think you have a really cool opt-in gift, right?
I do. Thank you. Thank you for asking. So the easiest place to find me and then get access to all the other things that I'm up to, as well as my website, and it's my name, MinetteRiordan.com. I assume that'll be in the show notes, so I won't spell it out for people unless, Sharon, you think I should.
Oh, yeah, go ahead and spell it out, because everybody's different. Sometimes they aren't on the website, they're on someplace else.
And my name only has one N, not two. It's a mistake people often make. So it's MinetteRiord, as in dog, AN, MinetteRiordan.com. And on there, you can find links to all the other places I love to hang out on social media. And I'm Minette, or Dr. Minette Riordan, on all social media. So I'm super easy to find. But on the homepage of my website, you'll find access to a brand new free gift that I just created, which is all about how to love your inner critic. So it's a little bit deeper dive into some of those strategies I was talking about today, including some guidance on how to personify and be in dialogue with your inner critic, and how to shift some of those negative limiting beliefs that hold us back into more empowering thoughts around our own art and creativity. So it's perfect for you if that inner critic is really loud. It's not about getting rid of the voice. It's about learning to fall in love with that voice and actually how to turn that inner critic into your best ally.
Yeah, give it a new job.
Yes.
I loved your comment about draw a picture of it. And I was thinking of Van Gogh's self-portraits and things like that, going, well, to me, they were like, oh, okay, they're not that good, but they are amazing. They sell for millions of dollars, right? So,
right. Some of Picasso's
those are the ones that
quirky, his Cubist period. When you think about his, what he did, how he deconstructed faces, that's what my inner critic looks like, some weird deconstructed Picasso-esque face.
So I love that. I had never heard that. Draw a picture, frame it, put it on your desk. I love that. Everyone, that's Minette Riordan, and you can find her at MinetteRiordan.com. And also check out Sisterhood of the Unstoppable Artists over at Facebook as well, because that is a fun, supportive group if you're looking to release your inner creative and also find support, non-judgmental support. You have to go in there with the right frame of mind. That's the way it is. And being non-judgmental about ourselves, everyone, I think that's the critical thing, especially as we go into spring. Don't have time for it now, but really, I know through the pandemic, there was a few pandemic 15, 20, 25s going on. Let's just stop all that. We'll talk about more of that in the few coming weeks. So everyone, have a great week. Whatever your adventures, join me next week for another brand new adventure on the Autoimmune Hour. I'm not sure what we'll come up with, but we'll come up with another great guest, just like Dr. Minette. Join me over at Understanding Autoimmune on Facebook, Understanding Autoimmune on Twitter, the Autoimmune Hour also on Facebook and Twitter, and also understandingautoimmune.com for this show and all the other shows. Enjoy.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
Hi, this is Sharon, and of course you know me from here on the Autoimmune Hour. Maybe you don't know I'm also an author. My latest book is for kids. It's Pinky Chenille and the Rainbow Hunters, a winner of a 5-star Reader's Favorite review. It's perfect for your early reader and a great bedtime story for your young adventurers. Check it out over at pinkychenille.com. That's PinkyChenille.com. See you there. Do you want to be a better leader, have better relationships, become more self-aware, be a better communicator? Hi, I'm Sharon Sayler, best-selling author, professional speaker, and executive coach. And my life passion is empowering professionals to be the best that they can be. After years of working with professionals, I've discovered the 7 things nobody is telling you that can cost you your clients, sales, and even your career. And I want to give it to you free. You've heard my show, you know my passion, and maybe we'll be working together sooner rather than later. So go grab this ebook now to find out the 7 things that's costing you big time over at SharonSayler.com/radio gift.